I know the government is taking a positive step towards this in terms of 5-day work weeks, more family life time and things like that. But I think more can be done. And is there anything that's being done? And is this the image that we want to portray to Singaporeans, that we really want them back? If we really want them back, I think we should ensure that they come back for good. They come back knowing that this is my home. I'm going to be here. I'm going to contribute for the good of the country, knowing that I love Singapore. So how are we going to do that instead of just looking at economic point of view? That's basically just maybe your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Actually, I think I can identify with that, because I think upon what was mentioned, I think we have to be given this sense of ownership and come back to Singapore and feel that we can contribute. We have to feel that we own part of Singapore, and rather than just being a place that we can come back to make money. I think a stake has been given to us, and perhaps Minister could tell us how we can get this sense of ownership, emotional attachment.
Well, the fact you're articulating this instead of me shows that my speech has worked. Because I would have, in fact, my first speech was exactly what you said. But it has to come from within. Home is what you feel, not what I say it is, right? And I wanted to bring people to a point where they say, oh, but there's so much missing. And I think that's when you cheat. You weren't planted right. But let me share with you why there is this angst that Singaporeans who go overseas feel more. And the very fact that you're asking, why is it that that actually the government has to try to attract Singaporeans back, reflects that there is this anxiety or tension, or the reason is language, if you ask me. We ask the same question when we look at, you travel around different countries and you see how they develop. So if you look at Taiwan, for example, many of them, the first language that you do when you're young roots you. There's no doubt, in my mind. Let's compare with other countries. For example, Denmark. You spend the first 10 years in one language, after which you switch. And that sense of rootedness is very strong. The closest parallel to us is Taiwan, because they're Chinese, but they use Chinese. And then when they go overseas, or Manpower, then when they go overseas, they do their PhDs in America, but they still feel a greater sense of coming home. And of course, they want Taiwanese. So the first language truly roots you, creates that bond. Even for Hong Kong, for example, you go and dine in the banter, in Cantonese. For those, how many of you are Cantonese here? It's a very different dining experience, right? The banter with the hostess, the taxi driver. Here, how to banter. Not sure which language to use sometimes. Ireland is the same. Ireland used to say that all their civil servants had to pass Gaelic before they allowed them to be civil servants. Then they gave it up. This is too hard. But Gaelic is still used, and the Celtic influence is very strong. We made the determination to use English as our primary language. We had to. It's still the right decision, because we had to be relevant to the world. And it was really, it was a vehicle in which to reduce communal tensions, because we were Malay schools, Indian schools, Chinese schools, and there was a common ground, and the results speak for themselves. It was the correct decision. But in doing so, we have given every Singaporean a passport to be articulated to the modern world, because English was rose. You open up, you read the newspapers, you identify with the liberal values or the values that's in the English press. And recently there's talk about even the BBC that says, it's not true that newscasters or media don't take positions. They have to. That's the way they are. You can't write outside yourself. No one is truly objective. So, because we have used English, this is the prism in which you evaluate the world, you analyze, you respond. And you go to a different place and say, oh, these values. If they had chosen French, for example, or maybe, we'll be different. Or if we like Timor and chosen Portuguese, we will be different. The stress is different. So part of the attraction of the Singaporean is indeed his ability to articulate so well and feel so comfortable in a world that's increasingly uses English. I visited France on one of the training bases. We were thinking of training Germans and Italians, air fighters for it. And they says, well, because we want to be European, we're going to change our language of instruction. I said, well, what are you going to use? This is France. English. All said, just 60% of French think that English should be the language of the EU. So we live with that reality that you feel more comfortable sometimes in an English-speaking environment. It made you comfortable, but you're adaptable, you can move on to various fields. You enjoy the theatre, you enjoy the conversations. And so I think the challenge and the ability and focus for us is to make Singapore various aspects of it home. And how do we do that? We want to make our environment as conducive as possible. And that's why we get very upset when there's a haze. Neighbors don't understand and they say, well, 9 months in a year I give you oxygen, 3 months in a year I give you haze. That's life. You say, well, thank you. But we want to make it sure that it's some place that we're proud of, and we're very keen on making this place clean and predictable, that if you have talent, you will rise. We can't give you wide open spaces like the States or Australia or New Zealand. That's not possible. But I think we can give you a standard of living that you can fulfill your aspirations, and, as you say, call it